A man and his daughters were hiking. It was November 1970. The place was the Isdalen Valley in Norway. They called it Death Valley. It was remote, a place people went to be alone. They smelled something strange, something burning. They followed the smell, and then they saw her. A woman's body wedged between some rocks. She was burned, badly. The front of her body was charred, unrecognizable. Her pose was odd, like a boxer's, a position bodies sometimes take in intense heat. Around her were a collection of objects, a purse, an umbrella, a watch, and some jewelry laid out carefully on a rock. There were 2 plastic bottles that smelled of gasoline, and a half-empty bottle of liquor. And sleeping pills were found nearby. Police arrived. They looked at the scene. It was strange. Suicide? It didn't feel right. The placement of the objects felt deliberate, almost ritualistic. They looked at her clothes, or what was left of them. The labels were cut out. They checked the umbrella, the purse, anything that might have a brand name or a maker's mark. All of it was scraped off, removed. This was not a simple death. Someone had tried to erase this woman, to make her a complete blank. The investigation began. The police had nothing. No name, no face, no identity. They put out a description of the items found, hoping someone would recognize them. A few days later, they got a break. An employee at the Bergen train station recognized the three. He told police about 2 suitcases left in a locker. They had been there for a while. Police opened the suitcases, and inside the mystery deepened. They found clothes, all with the labels removed. They found money from several different countries. They found a tube of eczema cream, but the prescription label with the doctor's name and the patient's name had been peeled off. They found a notepad with what looked like a code, and they found the things that would come to define this case. They found the disguises, wigs, multiple wigs, and the proof of multiple identities. This is where the real story starts. Not with the body on the hill, but with the contents of those suitcases. The woman in Death Valley was a ghost. But before she died, she had been many people. The wigs and the trail of false names she left behind are not just strange details. They are, perhaps, the only real clues she left. They might be the key to everything. Could her disguises tell us who she really was? Let's start with the wigs. There were 9 of them. Think about that for a moment. Not one for a bad hair day or a special occasion. 9. A whole collection of different personalities packed in a suitcase. This wasn't about vanity. This was about transformation. It was a professional kit. A wig can change a person completely. It's not like a hat or a pair of sunglasses you can take on and off. A wig changes your silhouette, your hair color, your style. A blonde can become a brunette. Long hair can become short. A person you pass on the street might look completely different an hour later. The police had witness statements from hotels, from shops. The descriptions of the woman were inconsistent. Some said she had long dark hair. Others remembered her as a mousy brown. Some thought she was elegant and well-dressed. Others thought she looked common. The wigs explained this. She was a chameleon. She presented a different face to everyone she met. Who needs 9 wigs? An actor, maybe. But there was no evidence she was with any theater company. A prostitute? Perhaps, but her movements and behavior didn't quite fit that profile. Her stays in hotels were methodical, her interactions minimal. She wasn't soliciting. The most compelling answer is someone who needs to avoid being recognized, someone who needs to blend in, then change, then blend in again somewhere else. Someone living a life on the run, or a life undercover. The wigs suggest a level of dedication to her craft, whatever it was. She was not an amateur. This was a practiced skill. She knew how to become someone else. The wigs were her primary tool. They allowed her to move through cities and hotels without leaving a consistent visual trail. If someone remembered a brunette woman checking out of a hotel in Stavanger, they wouldn't be looking for a blonde woman getting on a train in Oslo. It was a simple but effective way to break the chain of evidence, to become untraceable. But the physical disguise was only half of the story. The other half was on paper. The police investigation soon uncovered a trail of hotel check and cards from across Norway. She had stayed in Bergen, Oslo, Trondheim, Stavanger, and on each card she used a different name. The names were a puzzle in themselves. Fenella Lorch, Claudia Tielt, Vera Jarl, Alexia Zarna Merchez, Genevieve Lancier, Claudia Nielsen, Elisabeth Lienhofer. They sound plausible, vaguely European. They came with different nationalities, Belgian, German, British. She never used the same name twice at the same hotel, and she often switched identities between cities. She was creating a web of confusion. She filled out the forms in German or French. Her handwriting was neat, practiced. She was also careful. She always paid in cash. She often requested to change rooms after checking in, maybe to get a better vantage point, or to ensure she wasn't being watched. She was a woman who was constantly aware of her surroundings. Her movements were not random. They seem to follow a pattern, a circuit around Norway. So now we have two sets of disguises. The physical ones, the wigs ones, and the documentary ones, the aliases. When you put them together, a picture starts to form. This is not a person having a mental breakdown. This is a person with a job to do. The meticulous removal of labels, the cash payments, the multiple identities, the constant movement. This is tradecraft. This is the behavior of an intelligence agent, a spy. The Cold War was in full swing in 1970. In Norway, as a NATO member sharing a border with the Soviet Union, was a hotbed of espionage. Both sides, NATO and the Warsaw Pact, had agents on the ground. They were watching military movements, testing naval defenses, making contact with informants. It was a quiet, secret war fought in hotel lobbies and back alleys. The Isdal Woman fits perfectly into this world. Her disguises were her uniform. A spy doesn't wear a trench coat and a fedora like in the movies. A spy wears whatever makes them invisible. One day, she could be a German businesswoman with short brown hair. The next, a Belgian tourist with long blonde hair. Each alias would have a simple, plausible backstory. Enough to get by at a hotel check-in, but not so detailed that it would fall apart under scrutiny. The wigs and the passports were the tools that made this possible. They were her shield. Think about her movements. She visited cities with significant military or strategic importance. Stavanger, for instance, was a key NATO port. Was she observing shipping, meeting a contact? Her coded notepad adds another layer to this theory. Police cryptographers looked at it. It wasn't a complex code. It seemed to be a list of dates and places she had been. A travel diary. But why write it in code if it was just a travel diary? Perhaps it was a simple way to keep track of her movements for a report, a way to jog her memory without creating a plain language document that could be used against her if she were caught. Her death, too, seems different when viewed through the lens of espionage. The official cause of death was suicide. A combination of phenobarbital sleeping pills and carbon monoxide poisoning from a small campfire. But many investigators have questioned this. To arrange such a death out in the open in a remote valley seems incredibly difficult. And why the ritualistic placement of her things? Why the intense effort to erase her identity? If she was a spy whose cover was blown, her own agency might have retired her. Or a rival agency might have captured, interrogated, and then eliminated her, staging it to look like a suicide. The erasure of her identity would be part of the cleanup. A spy is most useful when they are a ghost. Even in death, they should leave no trace that could lead back to their employers. Her body was a message, perhaps, or simply a loose end being tied up. The disguises are what make the spy theory so compelling. A regular person doesn't travel with a collection of wigs and false identities. A criminal might, but the nature of this case doesn't feel like organized crime. There was no evidence of drug smuggling or theft. Her mission, whatever it was, seemed to be about information and observation. She was a watcher, and her disguises were what allowed her to watch without being seen. Let's consider an alternative. What if she wasn't a spy, but something else? Could she have been a high-end courier, moving money or secrets for a corporation or a criminal syndicate? The disguises would still be essential. They would allow her to cross borders and make deliveries without creating a traceable pattern. The different currencies found in her luggage would support this. She was operating internationally. But this theory doesn't fully account for the intensity of the identity erasure. A criminal on the run might use one or two aliases, but this woman had a whole system. It was her way of life, and the strange circumstances of her death don't quite fit the profile of a typical criminal hit, which is often more straightforward. Another idea is that she was fleeing something. Not the law, but perhaps a controlling and powerful family, a cult, or an abusive husband. In this scenario, the disguises would be a tool for survival, a way to disappear and start a new life. She would have needed to constantly change her appearance and name to avoid being found. This theory paints a more tragic, personal picture. A woman so desperate to escape her past that she literally tried to burn it away. This could explain the suicide, if that's what it was. Maybe she felt she was about to be caught. Maybe the loneliness and paranoia of a life on the run became too much to bear. Her final act would have been to ensure her old identity could never be connected to her new one, even in death. She didn't just want to die, she wanted the person she used to be to vanish from the earth. But even this theory has holes. Where did she get the money? Where did she learn the tradecraft? Her methods seem too professional, too polished for a desperate amateur. The coded notes, the systematic movements, the cool-headed interactions with hotel staff, it all points to someone with training. So we keep coming back to the same place, the world of intelligence, the world of secrets and lies. In that world, a wig is not a fashion accessory. It's a piece of equipment. A false passport is not a forgery. It's a key that opens a door into another life. The Isdal Woman had a whole keychain. For decades, the case was cold. The woman remained a Jane Doe, a collection of theories and strange facts. But in recent years, science has given us new tools. The case was reopened. Investigators exhumed her body. They were able to analyze the isotopes in her teeth. Isotopes are atoms of the same element with different weights. The isotope signatures in our food and water get locked into our teeth as they form in childhood. By analyzing them, scientists can get a good idea of where a person grew up. It's like a geological fingerprint. The results for the Isdal Woman were stunning. They suggested she was born around 1930 in or near Nuremberg, Germany. But as a child, she moved west, towards the French-German border region. This was a bombshell. For the first time, there was a geographical anchor, a place to start looking. This new evidence adds weight to the spy theory. A German woman born just before the rise of the Nazis, growing up during World War II, living in a contested border region. This was a part of the world torn apart by conflict and ideology. It was a fertile recruiting ground for intelligence agencies of all stripes after the war. The Soviets, the Americans, the British, the French, and the two Germanys east and westward were all looking for people with the right skills and background. A woman who spoke multiple languages witnesses said she spoke German, French, Flemish, and broken English, and could blend in across Europe would have been a prime asset. The analysis also showed that just before she died, she had likely been in France or the border region again. This matches her story of being a Belgian or French citizen that she told on some of her check-in cards. It seems her disguises had a grain of truth to them. She wasn't just picking identities out of thin air. She was building them around a core of her own life experience. This made them more believable. It was another sign of her professionalism. DNA was also extracted. We now have her full genetic profile, but so far it hasn't matched anyone in any international database. She has no known relatives who have submitted their DNA. She remains a ghost, but now she is a ghost with a specific genetic code and a childhood home. The disguises are still at the heart of it all. The science can tell us where she came from. But the wigs and the aliases tell us what she became. She became a mystery. It was a deliberate choice. Every action she took was designed to obscure, to confuse, to misdirect. Imagine her in a hotel room, late at night. The city outside is dark. She lays out her tools. A wig on a stand. A new set of papers. She studies her face in the mirror. She is not just putting on a costume. She is shedding a skin. The woman who checked in that afternoon ceases to exist. Tomorrow morning, a new woman will walk out the door. What must that feel like? To live a life where your own name is a secret, where your own face is something to be hidden. It must be an incredibly lonely existence. The constant vigilance, the fear of making a mistake, of saying the wrong thing, of being recognized. Her only constant companions were her secrets. The coded notepad, once thought to be a travel log, could be seen in a different light. Maybe it was her only way of holding on to herself, a secret record of her real journey, written in a language only she could understand. A thin thread connecting the many women she pretended to be. The Isdal Woman's disguises were both her greatest strength and her ultimate downfall. They allowed her to move through a dangerous world with incredible freedom. But they also isolated her completely. When she died, there was no one to claim her. No one knew her real name. The system she had built to protect herself in life also ensured she would be anonymous in death. This is why her case continues to haunt us. It's not just an unsolved murder or a mysterious suicide. It's a story about the very nature of identity, how fragile it is, how easily it can be constructed, and how easily it can be erased. The Isdal Woman took her identity with her to the grave, but she left behind the pieces of her other lives. The wigs, the names, the fragments of the story, these disguises are the key. They are the loudest, clearest message she left. They tell us that she was living an extraordinary life. A life that required her to be no one, and therefore everyone. They point towards the clandestine world of the Cold War, a world of shadows where people were pawns in a global game. She was likely one of those pawns. We may never know her name. We may never know which side she was on or what her mission was. We may never know if she took her own life out of despair, or if she was silenced by her enemies, or even her friends. But we know she was a professional, we know she was meticulous, and we know that her identity was a secret she was willing to die to protect. The woman in the suitcase was not the real woman. The woman on the check-in card was not the real woman. The wigs created a gallery of characters, but the artist remained hidden. The central question is not who was the Isdal Woman, but why did she need so many disguises? The answer to that question would tell us everything. It would unlock the entire mystery. her life was defined by deception. She wore her lies like a second skin. It is only by studying the shape of those lies, the cut of the wigs, the sound of the false names, that we can ever hope to catch a glimpse of the real person underneath. She built a labyrinth around herself, and for over 50 years, we have been walking its corridors hoping to find the center. The disguises are not a distraction from the truth. The disguises are the only truth she left behind. They are her legacy, a silent, powerful testament to a life lived in the shadows. And they are why we are still talking about her today. The woman with no name but many faces.